What's going on, guys? Jeff back to another video. Well, today we've got something pretty exciting. As you guys know, I did a Super Joe restring video several months ago, and it was a complete disaster. It left me physically scarred and emotionally scarred. I was pretty pissed off the way it went. Well, today we're going to do a web redemption for that guy. We're going to take my new Super Joe, which I came up with a new restringing technique, back to the shop, and I'm going to show you how I did him. What's going on, guys? Welcome back. Well, today's video is if you ever used to watch old Tosh.0 on Comedy Central, he'd always have that web redemption where he'd take a person that screwed something up and then make a nice comedy skit out of it and give them a chance to redeem themselves in a nice comedic way. This is kind of sort of a web redemption for me, if you will. If you watched my previous G.I. Joe Super Joe restoration video, you know that I cut the shit out of myself. And the whole video is a complete disaster, but I rebounded and made that figure work eventually, just not on camera. So to start off, to let you guys know, my thumb has completely healed, for the most part, from that horrific X-Acto knife slip. Still is hard to get full mobility when I bend it all the way. It hurts sometimes when I do snatches or power cleans and I use a hook grip and pull my finger across there, if you're familiar with powerlifting. But for the most part, the thumb's all healed up. So let's hope we never have an accident like that again. It's a lot of blood. So there's the scar. It's all healed up. So anyways, another real quick story. So I get a lot of people who message me and tell me that I've inspired them to start their show or start their YouTube channel or start doing customizing or whatever. So little known fact, the person that inspired me to do this channel was Peter from The Skull Review. A huge fan of that channel. If you don't know that channel, which I'm sure all you guys do, that was one of the first YouTube channels I used to watch. And Peter's a really cool guy, and he's done a lot of amazing customs. He took a break for a while, like a lot of people, when YouTube changed their policies, because a lot of people were in the dark on what was going to happen with YouTube. But he actually has brought his channel back in a big way, and I enjoy it, and I enjoy Peter's contributions to the hobby, because he does a lot of really cool stuff. But he inspired me to start this channel a long time ago. And yeah, thank you, Peter, if you're watching this. So Peter actually did a Super Joe restoration a few months back that was really, really good and very outside the box. And he had some ideas that I think a lot of us never even thought about. So I watched that video a few times, and I came to some realizations that I could do a restoration of another Super Joe with similar technique to what Peter used. And as I thought about a lot of things, I came up with using these rubber gear tires. I got these, or gear ties. I got these at Lowe's, and I've already done a figure with these, and it works extremely well. So on today's video, this is my web redemption. We're going to restore this Super Joe Commander back to his original glory, if those were even possible for those figures. And we're going to use these rubber twist ties or gear ties to do it. So we'll go ahead and bust this guy out of his packages, and we'll come back and I'll show you exactly what we're going to do. So let's get this baby rolling. All right, guys. So let's go over a few things before excuse me, we get started on this. I want to cover just a few basic things with this figure that's pretty common in a lot of these old Super Joe bodies. First off, one of the first steps we got to go through is we have to get rid of the old excuse me, oxidized grommets that attached all the legs and arms to this thing. You can see these have broken down a lot, so I like to take one of these clay tools. It's just a sharp pointed spear or probe, and just go through and dig out those old pieces like so. So you go through and we'll do that. You can see we've got it in the arms as well. Another issue is the figure itself, the torso. We got to clean his head up, but you want that 1-2 punch action to work, and right now it doesn't work real well because of all that corroded gunks inside of him. So we'll get him all cleaned up, and what I like to do when I get these all cleared out is take a can of compressed air that you use to clean computer keyboards, among other things, and spray him out real good with that to try to get any loose particles that would be an issue with his functionality, and do all that. So that's what I'm going to do with this guy. Get him all cleaned up and try to get all these portions cleaned out with one of these probes, and then we can get on with the attachments. Also, I know when Peter did his Super Joe figure, he talked briefly at the end of the video on what type of hands he used, and I went back with him on that. I got with him on that, and he told me he used some Marvel Legends large hands, like for the Nuke figure, which I thought they looked great on his figure. And in his video, he mentioned using possibly female 1/6 scale hands, which I also think is a pretty good idea. I did not grab some of those. One of my weird obsessive quests of late has been to figure out what kind of hands to use for these. I know a lot of these guys who redo them use the Mego hands. I really don't like Mego hands at all. When I redid mine for the video, I used the Tonto hands from a Lone Ranger figure that I had. And I didn't really like those very much either. But I have found on Shapeways these Masters of the Universe Classics fists. And these appear to be really, really good in scale. Now I'm going to have to do some modifications of these to get them to go into these hands, but they appear to be a really good fit. Now what I'll do is I'll paint these a flesh tone, and any imperfections should be hidden by the jumpsuit. But I'm going to go with these hands. They're a little pricey. Shapeways is shit, man. Shapeways is, I don't know. Shapeways is kind of ridiculous when it comes to pricing, but whatever. I get it. So I'm going to use these fist hands, and you might ask yourself, like, why do you use fist hands for these? Well, I don't think there's really I don't have any accessories that my Super Joe is going to hold. He has the 1-2 punch, so I just put fists on him, and he's just going to be displayed almost like a glorified mannequin wherever I have these figures. I'm not going to be playing with these, obviously. So that's why I go with the fist hands. But I'll post a link at the end of the video to where I got these hands. They make other styles outside of fists, so you can make your own decision, educate yourself, see if it works for you. But that's what we're going to roll with for this restoration. So we're going to pause the video. I'm going to try to probe all these and get them all cleaned out with that compressed air, and we'll come back and we'll talk about how we're going to start building this figure out. Okay guys, welcome back. So I have taken my probes, canned air, and I've cleaned out all the old oxidized grommets from all the appendages. So they're loose and free, ready to be fitted with the new attachments. I also cleaned up the torso. Couldn't get the face all the way clean. It's okay. It's got some staining on the rubber on the head or the vinyl, but I did manage to get the 1-2 punch going again, which is cool. I just added oil to the joints in there, so that's awesome. So he'll be able to do his 1-2 punch, and he's all ready to go as well. So the figure's been cleaned up pretty good. So next step is to take our gear tie. I went ahead and snipped off one end of it so we can start working. So what I usually like to do is I will take this gear tie and insert it into the upper biceps on both sides. We'll start with the upper body first. So what I kind of figured out I could do, and you could do this either way, I actually just make a notch about 1/4 inch to 3/16 of an inch down using a razor knife. So I'll cut out a little bit of rubber around the full radius or the full diameter of this. So what happens is when you insert that into this hole here, there's a lip, so it kind of snaps in and secures it so you can't pull it out. And then what I'll do is I'll cut off a portion here and fit it to the forearm to get the right length, and then we'll cut it off. So I'll pause the camera here real quick, and I'll notch this and show you what I'm talking about, and we'll come back. Alright guys, here we go. So I've notched this out. You can see, just took a razor knife, notched that a little bit around the full diameter. Now this is going to slide up in here, and then this portion is going to catch on the inner part of this hole. Now, you don't have to do this. I do it because I think it's better to do that, and then you can not have to worry about it being pulled out at some point. But it's also permanent, so it's not going to come back out. In order to take this back out, you'll have to take this whole shoulder apart. So either way, you can do it that way. I'm going to do it this way to just keep these in here. So yeah, that's how I'm gonna do this. But you don't have to do the notch. I like to make things permanent. So we'll go ahead and I will insert this into the hole and snip this off, and we'll come back and fit this forearm. Okay guys, here we go. So it's all up in there now, so you can't pull it out. You can see it's kind of wedged in there really good. Now if you didn't do the notch, it'd still stay in there really tight. You wouldn't have an issue with that. So my recommendation to you guys who are doing this, I'd probably just go ahead and not do the notch. So next step is to take this portion here and it pushes in pretty hard, so be really careful to not bend your gear tie. So you can see it's way too long, so I'm going to snip off a little bit here, 1/4 inch or so. I like to have too much because you'd rather have too much than not enough. So I'd say we're still got to have about 1/4 inch left. So I'll kind of snip off less than 1/4 here. It's a trial by error type process. So you just want to okay, there you go. Looks pretty good. So it's in there. Can bend the arms up. Stay pretty well. So if we were going to give him a puncher's chance, he'd be able to do that. So there's the first arm that's finished up. We'll do the second arm. Come back and I'll show you what both of them look like finished. Okay guys, welcome back. So here we go. We've got both arms attached. Looks great. Yeah, I like the way that turned out. So obviously the next step is to do the same thing with your lower legs. So we'll get another gear tie and we will assemble the lower legs. and do the same thing. We'll notch out the portions that go into the lower legs so they stick in these holes here. And then we'll cut off just like we did the arms. So it's the same process basically for the lower legs. So we'll go ahead and I'll notch one out and put it in here and show it to you. You can get a feel for what that looks like as well. It's really just a simple process. So we'll pause this video and come back. Okay guys, so here we go. The legs are done, similar to how we did the arms. So I just cut one of these gear ties in half and used these portions. So again, it's just a matter of cutting off a decent amount. And then fitting them up in the leg to figure out how much we need to keep. So I cut off 1/4 inch at a time here. And just keep going. Probably need to cut just a teeny bit more off, not much, just like 1/8 maybe. And then once I get the length established on one of them, right here, great, see? Yeah, they stay in there pretty well, so. These don't stay in as tight as what the arms stay in. But they stay pretty well, so they work fairly well. So again, this is just a method I came up with to use in lieu of the total complete take apart method that I had in my first one. So we've got our legs now. Looking good. And so the last part obviously will be to thread this portion through the hips, and then these essentially go in here. Then you'll have your hip portion ready to go. So I just stick it in there. You can cut off a little bit, see how much we need in here in the hips. So it's a little too much. Pull this baby out, take off a little more, like say 1/8. So again, a little too much, so I think we can probably take off probably another 1/8 here. There we go. So you've got your Super Joe completely restrung. Now, put it back up here. The caveat to a lot of this is, as with all this type of restringing with these joints like this that aren't, the permanent joints, it's going to be loose, and you're going to have issues, obviously, standing and all the other things. So there's different things you can do to probably increase the friction in this one here, just so he's not so loose in his legs. But like when you do restrings like this, or new joints like this, there's sometimes just no getting around the way this stuff is. You could always put some type of material up in the hip balls to give him a little friction so he stands better. You could do several things, but I just want to let you know that it is going to be a little loose. And I think you're going to get the same thing doing the other methods as well. So I'm not sure if like you could do the elastic with the straw. I've seen that method, so you could do the elastic, tie it up through here with the straw, and then that might tighten this up maybe. I don't know. It's just it's a good question. So, but yeah, it's gonna be a little loose at the hips. But anyways, that's how this guy's gonna roll. It's just a method we're gonna do here. So we'll pause the video. We're gonna come back and we'll talk about doing these hands. Alright guys, welcome back. So it's time to do the hands. So when I first initially looked at using these Masters of the Universe Classics hands, I thought that the peg here would be suitable to go in this hole here. Now I think under normal circumstances, if this was a flexible rubber hand, you wouldn't have any problem forcing this in there and it would fit nice and tight. But since this is 3D printed, it's not going to be the case. You could do a few things. First things, you could take this and cast or mold it and then cast it in a flexible material to make your own hands. That's definitely an option if you wanted to do that, using a flexible material. Or what I'm going to do here is one of two things. I'm going to sand this portion down a little bit to see if I can snap it in there. And if I can't, then I will more than likely cut the peg off, drill a hole, and then just use the remaining portions of this this gear tie and just use it to attach. One of the two things. We'll see if we can sand this down first and get it in there. So we'll come back. I think I'll use, I thought about using a Dremel, but I think that's almost too aggressive. So I'm just going to take my file and work it down and see how that works. So we'll be back in a few here. Okay guys, welcome back. So a little update. I tried to start sanding that 3D printed plastic and it just wasn't going great. And I didn't want to damage the hand in the process. So I actually just decided to cut it off and drill out a hole and just throw some of that gear tie up in there and then push that in there, giving us a perfectly operating 1-2 punch fist. So as you can see, the scale of the hands is really nice with the body. So I think that worked out great. So that's what I'm going to do with this figure. I'm just going to go ahead and give him the 1-2 punch with those fists and use the gear ties. So yeah, it turned out great. So we'll do the other fist and we'll come back and you can see what the whole thing looks like. Okay guys, so got both arms done. Pretty cool, the fists. Let's get a little 1-2 punch action here for you. Cool. So that body is completely finished up. Like I said, the hip portion being so loose bothers me a little bit. I've thought about some different things to do to combat that, or to try to strengthen it. There's different things. I could put some two-sided tape up there. You can do a lot of different things, but it's okay. It's not a bad problem to have. I could probably rethink the restringing of the hips at some point and come up with a better method. But the next step is obviously to grab some paint, mix up some, and do the hands. I use this Citadel base coat to prime the hands, and then I'll just combine different colors for a flesh tone to try to match the skin tone of this Super Joe as best I can. And then after that, we'll get him dressed up, come back and present our final figure with some final thoughts. So we'll get these hands painted up and come back, and we'll have a completed Super Joe, hopefully. All right, guys, well, here he is. This is our completed Super Joe restoration or restring, or whatever you really want to call it. But a few things real quick before we talk about him. I went ahead and painted the hands, and they turned out really nice. When I do my paint, I just use some flesh tones, yellow, red, mustard, and orange. And then I just blend it till I get a color that's pretty close to the flesh tones of this Super Joe. You can see it turned out really nice. The flesh tone matches almost completely. You can see the hands look pretty good. I added a reproduction Super Joe sticker, and he's got his 1-2 punch. Cool. The hands look really nice, actually. So I'll put a link to the Shapeways page where I got these hands. These hands actually I think are the best ones you can get for these figures. You can choose which way you want to mount them. I like this way, to use the gear ties and drill holes in these. You have to be careful though when you do drill the holes, so you don't drill too deep and put a hole through the palm. I did on one of these, and I had to go back and fill it with mill put. So that's cool, or not cool, I guess. It's just a mistake that I made. But the figure, he looks really well. And another thing of note, when you put the jumpsuit on him, it kind of tightens the hips up a little bit, so he stands really nice. So just a nice, quick, simple restoration. Some of you guys might like this. Some of you guys might not like this. It depends on, how you want to do your restorations and how in-depth you want to get. This is probably one of the most least invasive ways. I'll talk about this guy here, which is one I just finished up. And it is done with the way that I did it in my first video where I cut myself. So it has the reproduction, or the cast grommets for the legs and shoulders, and I used Tonto hands on this one as well. So this guy actually has the light vest that works. So it's hard to have these stand with this light vest because it's so heavy, but you eventually can make them stand, I think. I don't know, this is like one of those deals where you probably want to get an action figure stand for these. There you go. So I do have a light vest for this guy, but it's so corroded that it doesn't work. And I'm probably going to, figure out something to do. I have a couple of these that are screwed up. I might actually just disconnect the microphone jack and rewire them with a brand new LED light, like maybe a green one or some other color. So it just can put a battery in there and use the push button just to make the light up. I might do that for these. I don't know. We'll see. But that wraps up this web redemption for my Super Joe figure. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I actually like doing this. This is a very easy one to do. It's pretty quick and simple. It doesn't take a lot of skill, and I think it's a good one. I'll also post links to some of the other repair videos I've seen. Peter at the School Reviews, his, as well as 2 other ones. You guys can get a feel for which method works best for you. But this is a completely restored Super Joe. In closing, I hope that Hasbro, with their, I don't know, the re-embracing of G.I. Joe, I'm not really sure what the heck Hasbro's doing with G.I. Joe, but I would like to hope that they'll find a place for Super Joe, maybe in like a Legends line or some type of line where we can get Super Joe done proper, because I don't really think he gets the respect he deserves. And it's a cool figure. It's just, it was a poorly thought out, poorly executed figure by Hasbro, but that's pretty much the late 70s, right? It's almost like we're mirroring the late 70s right now. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe to the page. Share these videos on your various social media platforms. Hit the notification icon. And I'll leave you with this. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Cheers.